Neighbors trying to enforce HOA rules on me that don't apply. My house and lot and my neighbor's house and lot both look like they're part of a subdivision, but we aren't. We have proof that we were never part of the original plat and that we have no deed restrictions confirmed by our township in writing on their letterhead. All other homeowners have deed restrictions, like all campers and boats must be stored in a fully enclosed garage. We also have proof that the subdivision never formally formed an HOA. Therefore, they don't collect fees or meet or have bylaws. We have been receiving anonymous letters trying to scare us into conforming to these deed restrictions. My husband and I have a camper on the side of our house which abides by township ordinances, using a local attorney's name as the author, who was one of the original developers. I called the attorney, and he said that he did not send any of the letters and has not been part of that project for more than 10 years. The letters have threatened legal action. I've received probably 8 now, but of course can't confront the author of the letter because I don't know who they are. The attorney, by the way, is not happy someone is using his name and now business address as the return address on the envelope and wants to send a cease and desist order. But again, we don't know who the true author is. Short of erecting a snarky sign in my front yard calling the anonymous author a chicken crap, I'm not sure what to do. File a police report just to go on record? I know nothing will come of that, but is it a good idea? I'd love to find out who's doing this so we can put the entire issue to bed. Security cameras, like ones that double as a doorbell, are cool for these situations. And if I were you, I'd contact the post office and speak to someone there. I don't know for sure, but that sounds like some type of mail fraud to me, and the post office takes that very seriously. I've heard they have good investigators. I'm surprised the lawyer involved hasn't done this already. Yeah, I mean, if you're going so far and breaking the law in this way, look who you're messing with. Some things you just don't get your hands into, I think. That's my personal opinion, and they are. What would you do? Insurance company refusing to comply in condo water damage case. Board threatening to sue the owner, me, for $55,000. My condo had a flange malfunction and it caused water damage to my unit and others under me. It was confirmed in the assessment that this was not in any way my fault. It's about $55,000 worth of damage. I have insurance on my unit with extended water coverage, as well as the condo corporation has insurance for the building, which I pay into through condo fees. So technically, I'm covered on both ends and there shouldn't be a problem. Which, if that were the case, I of course wouldn't be in this. Although it is clear that this should be covered by insurance. My unit's insurance claims that the condo building's insurance should cover it, and the condo board claims that my unit's insurance should cover it, basically arguing over the wording of an amendment in the declaration. Neither one is budging, and we've made little progress for 4 months, so now the condo corp is getting pressure to schedule the repairs and threatening me that they have the right to come after me personally for the $55,000 as per the bylaws. The cherry on top of all of this is that both of my unit's insurance and the condo corp's insurance are the same insurance company. So in either scenario, the intact insurance will have to pay. It's essentially a fight between departments within the company. However, the board and I are the ones doing the back and forth, and now they're trying to push it on me personally. It's infuriating. So to me and everyone that I've explained the scenario to, this is insane, but I'm not a lawyer or an insurance professional, so here's my questions. Now, my unit's insurance company is refusing to send me the internal legal opinion that they got that they believe proves it's not on them, but rather on the condo building's insurance. Are they allowed to withhold a legal opinion on my own claim from me? The condo board's yet to report a claim to their own insurance, as they believe strongly that this amendment in the declaration states that it falls on the unit's insurance or the unit holder. Do they not have a duty to report this to their insurance? Can they just get out of that by leaning on the declaration like this? Can a condo board come after and sue one of the owners for large damages related to an insurance claim due to the owner's insurance not cooperating? Oh man, you might need a lawyer for this one. I'm not a lawyer myself, but this is a lot of legal shenanigans here, and I'd want somebody on my side that knows what the heck they're talking about, that specializes in this stuff. What would have you done? So sue me. Really? I was working 40 hours a week programming at my main job, but I did occasional small projects in the evenings and on weekends for other clients. At one point, I was referred to a large company that runs major stadiums and event venues around the country. One of their stadiums is relatively close to where I live. I'll just call them Mark 1 for this story. the saga begins. This manager at Mark 1 said they wanted a simple administration database and user interface for employee timekeeping. Apparently, the old system they had was not working for them. I got the details of what they wanted and drafted a set of specifications. Told them that I could write the system to the specs for $2,000 flat rate. They agreed. I immediately went to work and churned out a database and UI for the system with full documentation in about 2 weeks. So I scheduled an in-person meeting to show them. Now, when I showed up at the meeting, someone representing the security department was there, and he asked about getting some additional features. Sure, I told him, I can do that. So I went back, I wrote up a change request and incorporated the additional features into the platform. I scheduled another meeting with Mark 1 for a couple of days later. When I got to that meeting, I noticed the audience had grown. There were now 2 extra people from the finance department. Can you add feature X, feature Y, and feature Z? They asked. Sure, no problem. So I left, wrote up a change request, and added the features. A few days later, I met with them again. Imagine my surprise when the audience size had grown and the new attendees asked for more features. This went on for about 5 more rounds, and I was getting frustrated that I had spec'd out a 2-week project that was now taking months, and I wouldn't be paid until I delivered and they accepted the final product. But I chugged along, implementing all their change requests. But one day, the Mark 1 manager called me. Apparently, she had been speaking with other departments that weren't represented in her status meetings of ever-increasing mass. She gave me a list of dozens of new features that they wanted, some of which would require a complete redesign of the core database and an overhaul of the UI. I had had enough. I told her, hey, this is a complete overhaul of the original spec. I'll have to redesign and rebuild this from the ground up. Well, that's not my problem, she responded. Well, actually it is. I'm not going to design and build an entirely new system until you pay me for the current one, built to the specs that we agreed on. After a short pause, she dropped a bomb on me. Well, we're not going to renegotiate. You can consider this project canceled. That's not how this works. You still have to pay me for the work that I've done. No, I don't. You haven't delivered anything. Sue me. And she hung up. Cue the malicious compliance. Meet me at the courthouse. I took Mark 1 manager's advice and went to the courthouse the next day to file in small claims court to recover $2,000 from Mark 1. On my court date a couple of months later, I went down to the courthouse and was greeted by an arbitrator. In my state, they have court-appointed arbitrators meet the litigants when they arrive to see if the parties can sort out the case with an agreement to maximize the judge's time. The arbitrator asked me, is there anything that you would agree to resolve this immediately? I thought about it and I said, hey, if they'll pay me 90%, $1,800 right now, I'll drop the suit. He then went into a side room where the Mark 1 manager and the corporate lawyer were hanging out. I heard her screaming that they would either pay it all or pay zero. The arbitrator came to me with the news, and I told him, hey, I heard and I'm happy to take it all. He laughed and said, no, they want to go to trial. Fast forward a couple of hours. Fast forward is a funny phrase considering how slow the court moved, but hey, and we're standing in front of the judge. I'm at my table alone, and the Mark 1 manager and lawyer are standing at the opposite table. The judge asked Mark 1 manager to tell her side first. She went into a very long speech about the project in corporate America and apple pie and thermonuclear weapons, and honestly, I have no idea, because I stopped listening about 28 minutes ago. She talked non-stop for at least 30 minutes. Then the judge asked me for my story. Now, I wasn't maliciously ignoring Mark 1 manager's long-winded tale of political intrigue and patriotism. I was actually formulating a strategy. Well, I thought to myself, the judge probably had people who liked to speechify in front of him all day, every day. I also thought he might appreciate a short and sweet story that got straight to the point and didn't waste his time. So I said, Your Honor, they agreed to pay me $2,000 to design and build a software system for them. I completed the work based on the agreed specs, and then they decided to cancel the project after I was done. That was it. Then the judge asked me, How do I know you did the work? I had printed out the specs, change requests, documentation, and source code the night before. I lifted a ream of paper, 500 pages, from my table, and I offered it to the bailiff. Here's the code I wrote for them, Your Honor. The bailiff came to take it from me, and the judge waved him off. No need, I can see it from here. The judge then asked the Mark I manager, Is this true? She looked like she was in a daze. Yes. Then I fined the plaintiff in the amount of $2,000. Screw you, pay me. About a month later, Mark I still hadn't paid, so I called the county sheriff and explained. Sent him the court judgment documents, and he said, yeah, no problem, they'll pay. The sheriff actually called me later that day. He was on a cell phone, and I could hear him talking to the Mark I manager. He told her to cut a check for $2,000 right now, or he was going to, quote, rip your computers out of the wall and auction them off until the judgment is satisfied, end quote. I don't know if he had that authority, but the sheriff seemed to have a grudge against Mark I, and he was reveling in the opportunity to dog them out. Apparently, Mark I believed he had the authority because, long story short, the sheriff had a $2,000 check in his hand about 15 minutes later, and it was in my mailbox about a week later. Classic malicious compliance here. They think they're just going to win and take advantage of you, thinking you won't fight back, but then you do and stick to your guns and win it in the end. What would have you done? Oops, forgot to tell my new HOA neighbor about our new fence. We moved to a new city 3 years ago, and we specifically told our realtor we would not buy a property that was subject to an HOA. She came through. No HOA. Apparently, someone forgot to tell our neighbor. Either that, or our realtor didn't notice our house is in a 2-member HOA controlled by our neighbor. She called the city because we got a dog. She called the city because we were in our backyard at night. She called me because I gave her kid s'mores. She lost it on my kid and then called my daughter a liar when she was like, I don't need this, I have math homework. She also told us the property line is about 3 feet closer to our house than it actually is. I'm sorry, what? We had a boundary survey done before getting a privacy fence. I forgot to tell her, and the contractors are out there now loudly installing the post. Oh, and I think their sprinklers are in our yard too. Bummer. Now this isn't actually a 2-property HOA. We say that as a joke because she is constantly trying to tell her what to do. When we first moved here, we thought she was being helpful because this is our first experience with the suburbs and we had moved to a new state. We realized pretty quickly that she just likes telling people what to do. The update is they had to have 3 of their sprinkler heads removed. Aw man, some neighbors are just crazy to deal with, and when you have the good ones, it makes you so thankful they are not bad. What would have you done? HOA story. Oh, I must paint my garage? Sure thing. A friend of mine lived in a pretty big neighborhood with a pretty strict HOA. He was the first house at the bottom of the hill that you saw when you drive in. He asked and was allowed to add a garage onto his house, and he did so, siding it with cedar planks. It looked great. His HOA disagreed and told him the bylaws state that all exposed walls must be painted. He tried to appeal but was shot down unanimously. So he checked those bylaws further and found that, while it was stated that all exposed walls must be painted, there was absolutely no mention of any color restrictions. By the time he was done, each plank was a different primary color, and there was nothing they could do about it. They were furious with him, and he laughed his butt off. Now, this was back in the early 90s. The HOA was created years after the neighborhood had been established. Maybe they assumed that no one would use anything but tasteful colors. I don't know and don't care. Using a clear coat wood-like finish would defeat the purpose of the giant screw you to the whole neighborhood. I said he's a friend, but that's not quite true. He was some guy I knew through a boyfriend and hung around a lot. He just took great joy in being an equal opportunity jerk. Follow the rules and deliver. I mean, I did not think it would be primary colors going through the whole fence. That's why I kind of chuckled at it, because that was just a funny moment. What would have you done? HOA story. Sorry, Miranda. I was just doing what you told me to do. Our last house was in an HOA. Our garage had our 2 pickups in it, but my husband's mechanic truck was too long to fit in the driveway without being over the sidewalk, which was against HOA rules, so he couldn't park it in the driveway. He parked it in front of the RV gate that had a gravel driveway. Well, one day, we got a violation letter for parking on the landscaping in front of the RV gate. So I called. I spoke to the HOA manager, Miranda. She said if we wanted to park there, we had to pave it. I asked her, so you are telling me that we have to pave it? She said yes. So we paved it. And then we get another violation letter a couple of weeks later, this one accompanied by a fine, saying that we needed to get permission to pave the driveway. When I called up Miss Miranda again, I told her that we were not responsible for paying the fine, nor did we need to ask for permission, because her literally telling us to pave it was giving permission. She tried to argue against that, citing some HOA bylaws about applications and approvals and some such nonsense. I wasn't having it, and I told her that if she wanted people to follow the rules, then she shouldn't tell people to break them. She was ticked, but ultimately dropped the whole thing because she knew that she had messed up. When you follow the rules to a T and they realize, oh, they're in crap now, that is the funniest thing in this case when it's an HOA loser. What have you done? My hubs and I got our first house 15 years ago. We're in a rural area, just houses randomly sprouting up along a small country highway. Next door was an old retiree with nothing better to do but be a pain in everyone's neck. House 2 miles down the road with too many junk cars? He'd complain to the county government. Did that new barn have proper permits? Report them. Was someone too loud? Call the cops. It's a rural country road, not an HOA. He ticks off so many people, they throw out garbage on his yard as they drove by. People would snip his internet in the dead of night, and so on. Apparently this old jerk was such a Karen, he was actually chased out of 2 HOAs prior. A real peach. Let's call him Bob. Didn't like us moving in next to him. He had a nice, big new house, and ours was much more modest. He wanted to buy our property to expand his land, but was too cheap to fork up the money. Well, the housing market being what it was, we got our house dirt cheap and stole it right out from under his nose. Bob really didn't like us. The house was a fixer-upper, and Bob regularly liked to phone the permit office to make sure that we had all of our permits. If he deemed us too loud, there's a hunting lease behind us. Guess what noisy things were going bang bang during deer season? He'd call the police. My husband and father-in-law have dealt with his kind for years, so they knew exactly how to mess with Bob. Working outside, they'd say stuff very loudly like, well, I can't wait to put up this second story on the house, and also, this pool will be so nice. Permit office would call us, cops would show up. No, officer, I have no idea what you're talking about. After enough of these calls, they finally stopped responding. And then we could do stuff to really mess with Bob. We got a pig. He really didn't like her. Neither did I, but it was worth it. We got a rooster. He really didn't like that. We left our Christmas decorations up until March. Oh, lordy, raise that man's blood pressure. We put up a fence. It was initially open across 3 lots and made his yard look like a bowling alley. I guess he finally had enough. One day, 18-wheelers were loading everything up, and he was gone. I was dancing at the fence line and waving bye-bye when they pulled out. Miserable old coot. I've said it once before and I'll say it till the day I die. If you have good neighbors, do not take it for granted because the bad ones will make you wish that they were not so bad. Trust me. You ever had a bad neighbor? Let me know. The HOA demands that I follow their rules, but I'm not even in the HOA. Click the video on your screen so you don't miss the fallout of this one, and I will see you there.